Matariki provides us with a chance to reflect, to think of those we have lost, and to prepare and share a sense of hope and optimism for the future. I can't think of a better moment in time for us to take up what Matariki has to offer us as individuals, but also as a nation. But as we recognise the time in our calendar that is so unique to Māori, some may ask whether this truly can be a day that our nation can unite behind. I would argue wholeheartedly and absolutely yes. This is now an official holiday that does not divide us by Māori ancestry or other. Rather, it unites us under the stars of Aotearoa. It demonstrates the generosity of the Indigenous people of New Zealand to share knowledge, culture and history. And it holds within it enough space for each of us to build our own meaning and traditions.
Your granddad played a big role here, right?
Well, for the, that Māori element, I didn't know that my family had a legacy in this space.
Quite the legacy.
Yeah, and, I just grew up as a normal kid in Levin. So I grew up in the Horowhenua region and loved growing up. I had my grandparents and my parents and my siblings. But it was when I went to second year in university, and Matariki was started to be talked about back then. This would have been 93. I come home, I said to my grandfather, you know anything about this stuff? And off he went to his room, and he came back with a 400-page manuscript that he just dumped on my lap, written from the year 1898 to 1933.
Far out.
And he said, there you go. And it had 987 stars, 105 constellations, all their meanings, their narratives, their when they rise, what they mean, when they set. It's an incredible document that was given to me, and he just told me find a way to share it. So that's pretty much what's led to the work that I'm involved with.
It's a good thing you enjoy it, because if you didn't and you got saddled with that, find a way to share this, you're like, Granddad, that's a lot.
Well, it was kind of like, it wasn't until he was on his deathbed, because when he first gave it to me, I just had it. I thought, it's just for personal interest, and I just really got into it, and I loved it. But it was on his deathbed. I think he realised, look, he said to me that, if, knowledge that isn't shared isn't knowledge. And his whole point was that if, I didn't find a way to share some of that knowledge, that it would be lost and be worthless. And so I think he had an idea that there would be benefits for all people through the sharing of knowledge. And so, yeah, that's I've kind of used that as a mantra all my life, really.
So today, and in particular in the last 30 years, there has been a renaissance around Matariki. Began with various smaller groups in some communities, and then organisations like Te Papatongarewa started to be central in the regeneration of Matariki and knowledge around Matariki and the practice of Matariki. There are still people in the Māori society, within the culture, who maintain the traditional celebrations. They maintain the traditional rituals, and they still celebrate Matariki as our ancestors did, farewelling the dead, cooking food for Matariki, celebrating the new year, and syncing in their lives as much as possible with our traditional calendar system and our traditional activities. But for most New Zealanders, it's become a celebration of nationhood and national identity. And the reason is the way we celebrate Matariki and what it means to us here as Māori is unique. And and it's unique to us where we are in the world. And so as our nation has evolved and has perhaps starting to come of age, we're starting to reflect on what we celebrate and why we celebrate. We are starting to reflect on celebrations like Guy Fawkes and even Christmas and Easter and New Year and these celebrations and activities that were imported from the Northern Hemisphere. And we're starting to think about our own unique and special homegrown celebrations that have always been part of this landscape.
Because Maori, for example, quite rightly would argue that it's taken them an awfully long time to get to a place probably where they're not yet where they feel they should be. I mean, is there a new dynamic there that we have to worry about, Paul?
Well, there is, and I mean, in terms of Auckland, it's already happened. So the Asian community is now considerably larger than the Māori community of Auckland, and yet Auckland is the largest Māori community in the country. Right. So I think Auckland is the test case or the laboratory in which we get to play, and play is probably the wrong word because it's much more serious than that, but in which we get to play around and decide how we do politics, and in this case, recognition of diversity. And we started today by talking about council and the wards, and we're far from getting that right. So we need to ask the question right around the community: are there differences between people who are tangata whenua in terms of recognition as opposed to those who are immigrants and their descendants? And my answer is yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the conversation should be a very different conversation. And so I react quite strongly and very negatively when people say, there's me, I'm Pākehā, and there's others who are different. No, there are not. They're not all the same. And we need to recognise and nuance those sorts of conversations.
I feel like with that kind of positioning of Pākehā versus everyone else, I always try to think of the ideal as being Māori and everyone else, because Māori they're kind of the only unique kind of aspect of New Zealand that really needs to be upheld if we are to move forward. And I think there just needs to be more solidarity.
All right. What are you doing for Malariki?
Well, this is embarrassing. I have done some Matariki celebration already in the form of going to a multicultural council event last night, and I will go to an event in Wellington tonight. But on the actual day, my family are actually away, and I am literally planning to spend some time with my books on my laptop, going through the details.
So you're going to watch Netflix on Matariki, let's be honest.
I'm going to nerd it up, Sean, and my colleagues would tell you that I do enjoy nerding it up from time to time. The idea of uninterrupted time to really dig deep into the details of our policy plans, something I'm looking forward to. But you can guarantee I'll go for a walk and have some fun as well.
All right. Look, you talked about spending, and the reason I raised Matariki, it's only the second year it has been, well, I'm going to say mandated rather than celebrated in New Zealand. And millions of dollars of government spin money has gone into all sorts of made-up claims about what Matariki means and what you should do in going home to your family. It is almost entirely a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy and a holiday introduced by Jacinda Ardern for woke, politically correct reasons. Will National continue with Matariki?
Look, we're going to continue with the public holiday, and I think Matariki will mean different things to different people. To some people, they will approach it as a time for reflection and looking forward to the year ahead. For others, it'll just be a day off work. And look, that's the nature of a multicultural country in which people don't all have the same ancestry, cultural traditions or approaches. I love that we're a country where people have different histories, different ancestries, different ways of looking at the world, and I wouldn't want to impose one view on anyone.
All right. And look, I want to go back to the polls quickly. Look.